Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm waiting for Laura Rose to join, who is a friend of mine from the LGBT Mummies Tribe. And she is an ambassador for our fertility clinics versus COVID, free IVF, and donor sperm initiative, and is quite frankly amazing. Does great content and helps so many people. So I'm really excited to hear about her. And for you guys to ask her any questions about trying to conceive during a pandemic as an LGBT couple, and also secondary infertility. We're going to talk a bit about that. So it's just loading or waiting for her to join, and then we can chat. So have your questions ready and let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about in particular. She's been on our podcast before. There we go. Hi Laura, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. My husband just said to me, "Oh, you've got some lipstick on your chin." I said, "No, that's the spot."
Thanks. At least he told you though.
Thank you. You look gorgeous. So welcome. I've just been introducing you to those who don't yet know you and saying that we've done loads of stuff together, and it's really just a chat talking about your own experience and journey. And also you've been an incredible ambassador for the initiative that Fertility Help Hub is running at the moment, but also for the LGBTQ plus community with all the content and community and resources you bring to everyone around the world. So hi. And if anyone's got any questions as we're chatting, please ask, because that's what we're here for. And another thing, because we both work with a lot of experts in the UK and abroad, in the US, etc. And as well as sharing those resources and those expert tips, etc., it's so nice to have these conversations where we talk about stories and community stories and shared experiences, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's good. You need lived experiences from other people, other communities, to really get an idea of how difficult it is for so many people worldwide. It's so common now that people have fertility issues.
So could you just give a quick overview about your community, and then talk a little bit about your own personal journey? You're pregnant at the moment, congratulations.
Thank you.
But it wasn't an easy ride to get there, was it? So just to hear a bit more about that as well.
Yeah, so I'm one of the founders of the LGBT Mummies Tribe, and we are an organisation that works to educate, share and celebrate LGBT plus women and people globally in the path to parenthood. So whether it be adoption, fostering, fertility treatment, home insemination, being a step parent, a co-parent, any path to parenthood for our community, for the people that we support. And we're here as an organisation to give guidance. We have support groups. We have a community where you can meet and make friends with people. We hold events. And we do a lot of campaign work globally, but specifically as well with the NHS and the government to, create real positive policy change in regards to fertility, pregnancy, birth and beyond. So general healthcare for our community, which we're really passionate about. So globally, there's about 29,000 of us and growing. And it's been the last 3 years. And the reason we started the organisation was because when we started our journey personally around a decade ago or so, we really struggled to find anyone, of our demographic, of our community that was in the same space as us. All our friends are still having fun, going out and clubbing. And we had been together a long time. We'd been together 14 years, married 10.
Wow.
And we were ready to have children. So for us, it was a real struggle. And by the time we had our second child, it was just becoming so apparent that there was a niche in the market. There was a gap where women and people like us were really struggling for support and guidance, and just to have a voice and, bring positive publicity and visibility to our families and how we go about having our families and our children. So that's why we started. But for us, we've got 2 children. And our first is nearly 7. My wife carried her, and it took us 5 attempts, 3 failed cycles of IUI, and then another failed, but we miscarried the baby. My wife lost it just under the first trimester, and then on the 5th we had our daughter, and then I carried our son. And I luckily conceived really, really quickly. I fell natural unmedicated IUI cycle, second attempt.
Wow.
So for us, it was a real shock. You know, I was really pessimistic. Oh, it's not going to happen that quick. And it happened really, really quickly. And we were really, really fortunate. And then obviously our journey at the moment, when it came to looking to try for a third and I wanted to carry again, we thought it'd be really easy. And I think you kind of had that assumption that once you've got pregnant once, that you'll fall really quickly again. And in my head, I
So
was
what
like,
happened?
yeah.
Yeah, of course. So what happened this time then?
So we went for IUI and I was like, you know, it's definitely going to happen. It's going to happen really quickly. I'm really fertile. That kind of level of self-arrogance, thinking that you just fall again. And, you know, the clinical director sat there and said, well, you don't know. It doesn't always happen that way. And he was right. It was kind of like God saying, hold up, you know, it doesn't always happen that way. And we had 3 failed IUI cycles, and then we had further investigation. And since I'd had our son 2.5 years previous, my ovarian reserve had diminished by half. Now I was 33 at the time, so it was just a real shock, because by half is quite a lot. And they said,
Yeah.
you know, it could diminish even further. We don't know. And at that point, COVID had hit, and we were in a predicament. Do we wait? Do we see if anything else happens with my reserve? You know, how much lower it'll go, or do we sit back and think about it? And we sat back and thought, and we said, you know, we don't want to waste the sperm vials that we've got. Our donor has retired. We'll never get another chance. We had 2 vials left. So we decided to move to IVF. We'll do an egg collection because we can't do your IVF now. Okay, fine. And then they were like, actually, we can't do your egg collection either. And we were like, oh.
So when was
Okay,
this?
so
Was this time last year?
this time last year, literally as lockdown hit, and they said we can't
Really?
even do the egg collection, because in our head we were like, if we can get the egg collection done, we know we've got the embryo sat there. If it means however long, you know, we've got 2 children, we're really, really lucky, and we'll just try again when it passes. But because they couldn't collect the eggs, I had complete like mental meltdown, and was like, oh my God. And then I had to get my head around the fact that we didn't know how long the pandemic would go on for, how long lockdown would go on for, when we could, like, when the clinics would reopen and start again. And, you know, yeah, we are really fortunate to have 2 children, but we're both from big families. We're really family orientated, and we knew that we always wanted to have a big family, and it was something that we were just really passionate about. And in myself, I felt desperate for this final child, and to us, you know, that was what it would be. And I had to get myself in the mental headspace of, actually, with this secondary infertility, I've got to really think about what can I do to better our chances, better the outcome, more positive outcome. So the time from the March lockdown to when the clinics opened again, end of June, beginning of July, I think our clinic was it was the first in the UK that opened, CRGH. And
Yeah.
when it opened, obviously we would be ready. So, you know, I lost about 1.5 stone of excess baby weight that I never bothered to get rid of. I got really fit. I was working out in the garden. I was eating healthy. You know, I was working with the fertility kitchen, like a fertility nutritionist, to get me in
Well
the
done
best
you,
place
because
possible.
that is not the story of many people in lockdown.
No,
As in, it's
I could have
hard.
gone
It's
the other
been
way.
very hard to motivate yourself to keep healthy and on top of
Yeah.
everything with all the stresses that are
I
going on
think
at the moment.
mentally, I know that if I didn't do something there and then in that split second, and my wife's quite stoic, she's a very strong character, and she's so good for me. She said, there's nothing you can control right now. This is so far beyond our control. What
Yeah.
can you control? You can control everything else within our remit at home, your body, your diet, how you look, like get baby ready. So that's what I did. You know, I hadn't had a drink since the October before. And yet I was like, okay, I need a blowout. So I had one night with the school mums on Zoom, got really drunk, was like, how did I even do that? And after that, I knuckled down. Mentally, I got strong. I was reading up on the right things. I was speaking with Charlotte, the fertility nutritionist. I was losing the weight. I got really, really healthy. And then by the time the clinics opened, I was ready. And then we went back for treatment. We started IVF, had the collection. She couldn't be there. We kind of had to deal with that. We knew that would be the case. And then when it came to the transfer, again, I had to go through it on my own. For us, it's okay. We've been through all this stuff. But for other people, we know that we've supported. It was really traumatic for them, if it's their first or last baby, or, you know, they've been through trauma, you know, we got on with it. We knew that we had to just push through. And we had the transfer, had 2 embryos put back. I mean, top quality, you know, I really got my body and my embryos to where they needed to be, took all the right stuff. And in our heads, again, just got into this mindset of it's going to work, definitely going to work. And for the first time in all of our treatments that we've had over the years, over the last decade, we tested early. We tested day 9, and realistically, mentally, I wasn't prepared for getting a negative. Neither of us were. And it just blew us back. And middle of the pandemic, getting that news, it was just heartbreaking. So we just couldn't believe it. And then obviously we had to go back again for another cycle. And I had a frozen transfer. I had an endometrial scratch. I had acupuncture, carried on doing what I was doing the whole way through. And I fell, luckily, thank God. But to try and get pregnant in that kind of situation, that it's so unprecedented. No one in our lifetime have been through this, but so many millions of us have all been trying to get pregnant during a pandemic.
Yeah.
And keep your head on straight. It was tough. It was really
and without being able to see friends and family who you'd normally be able to have support from. It's not the same doing things over Zoom, is it?
No.
And do you, and also the added pressure of the finances that come with it, and as you said, you know, the concern about AMH and getting older, it's just so much, isn't it?
There were so many barriers. There's so many barriers to become an LGBT plus parent anyway, that we've had over the years. But to be an LGBT plus parent, to know that you've still got to have that sperm, and then your AMH is like halves, then a pandemic hits, you can't control it, then you move to IVF and then it fails again. I was like, that failed cycle, the word failed kind of just threw me. I was like, my body's failing, I'm not doing something right, what have I done wrong? And then you overthink and you get into this neurotic state of panic of reading up on everything. You know, with our organisation, you know, we're fully versed in research and all this stuff. But when you are in it yourself, all the guidance you give other people, it goes over your head. It completely does. And you just, you know, it's a really, really difficult time. But there's so many people, and I think that's what I kept trying to remind myself, and so did my wife. There's so many people more worse off. We've got 2 miracles. You know, if we're lucky to get this 3rd one, then we're really incredibly lucky. But there's some people out there that we support that are in a much worse position than us. And I had to keep reminding myself of that to get me through. And I think because no one really knew we were trying, only immediate family, it was more difficult. And then when it came to the last transfer, the 5th attempt, we didn't tell anyone. We didn't tell family at all. So when we rang them with the test, and my wife's holding it up on FaceTime, and like our parents are going, what do you mean? What? Because they were trying to work the dates out, which is confusing for anyone anyway. And they just couldn't get their head around it. And they're like, what do you mean? And then they're screaming, but you can't hug them. You haven't got them there. You know, Stacey's been absent for the whole of the journey, barring obviously the IUIs. And we've had to do it separately. So then it does put a lot of strain on the whole process, really.
Absolutely. And in terms of your first cycle, the very first time you were trying to conceive your first child, what were the obstacles that you faced then as an LGBT couple?
I mean, our clinic is great. You know, they've got staff that are, you know, trained. They know how to look after you. They're educated. They've got a real understanding of how to support you. So we've never had an issue on the private side. But I guess it's just the whole navigating through and having to, you know, be open with people, you know, with work, with friends. It's something that's not planned. It's not like, hey, I woke up and I'm pregnant and it was a mistake. It's something that you've got to plan well in advance. You've got to finance it. You know, you've got to have someone else have your other child so you can go to appointments together. So it's all that kind of stuff. And then obviously it's the questioning that you get from people. So how does it work then? And so who's the real mum? And it's all the language barriers as well. And we understand, because of what we do with the organisation, that with the language, people don't mean it. There's no ill intent there, not always. It's just that you have to then say, actually, no, we're both the real mums, but one's a bio and one's a non-biological mum or parent. So you have to deal with that. And then at midwife appointments, it's specifically across the NHS, unfortunately, a lot of them aren't aware of what IUI is. So when we were going to our appointments, we'd say, oh, well, they'd get it wrong of who we were anyway. They'd assume we were sisters or friends, or sometimes in some cases my wife was my mum, which was mental.
Gosh,
And
are you
quite
serious?
offensive for her, bearing in mind she's pretty young and she's only like 4 years older than me. But in those situations, it's difficult anyway. And then you have the barrier of, oh, we don't know what treatment you've had. Then you have to explain it. So it's a waste of NHS time, money. You know, it can be awkward. Midwives or health professionals can be embarrassed. You then have to kind of comfort them, be like, no, it's fine, because you know it's not them. It's the education and training that hasn't been updated. But again, GPs, all these different appointments, you consistently hit the same barrier of having to come out the closet. You know, I did that once, you know, when I was a lot younger, my younger years. I don't want to have to do it at every single appointment, but that is a barrier that you face. And for my wife, she's okay, you know, we've been through it a few times, but the whole non-biological parent side of it can be quite difficult and mentally draining for people. So mental health wise, a lot of people that go through the non-bio route because they're infertile, or, you know, their partner's going first, or they just choose not to, it can be really, really detrimental to your mental health.
So how many how many failed IUIs do you have to have before the NHS, before you might be applicable for help from the NHS?
It depends on your local CCG, your local clinical commissioning group. So that's the same for heterosexuals. So you check it out, what your local trust is, what your CCG is, what the criteria is. So, you know, it looks at your age, your BMI, whether you're fertile or not. And in certain areas, you either don't get it at all, it just doesn't, they don't have the funding, they don't cover it, or they do, but you have to have up to 6 rounds of private treatment. Now, basic IUI costs around 900 plus. That's just the treatment. Then you've got the medical costs, your parking, your congestion, you know, your lunches where you're grabbing stuff, your sperm, which is even more. So all these costs and hidden costs accumulate, and some people haven't got that kind of money. Some people, you know, of a certain income where, you know, they've got great jobs, they love their job, but they'll never earn over a certain level. So they'll never be able to afford that, which is really, really wrong. So they'll check and they go, well, nothing we can do. NHS can't cover us. We can't afford private treatment, whether it be IUI, IVF, reciprocal. And it's really, really awful that some people can't go down their chosen route. They have to go down an alternative route because of that.
Do you think it stops some people being able to have a family because of the cost then?
Oh God, definitely. Definitely. There's so many people that, and it is heartbreaking when you speak to people and they message and they want guidance and support, and they say, our trust doesn't cover it, and, you know, when's the review? And we look for them and we say, not for another 3 years, and or we can't find it, and they go, that's it then, we'll never get pregnant. And then they have to look down other routes. And what's really heartbreaking is people, you know, other people try and comfort them or say, oh, why don't you adopt, why don't you foster, which are amazing routes to parenthood. But if that's what you want to do and that's your path to parenthood, your chosen route, it's a human right to have the right to have a child by your chosen route. And that's the problem. You know, we work directly, like, you know, with the NHS, and we think means test it for heterosexuals and LGBT plus community, so that people from areas of social deprivation or of low income can have access to that funding. And then people like myself and yourself, it's not great that we've had to pay out for it, but I'd rather see people that really, really can't and will never have a family get the family they want than us take a piece of the pie. Do you know what I mean?
Someone actually just asked, is there any kind of funding to support people who aren't able to pay for it? And as you said, sadly not. But you are an ambassador for the campaign, which I'm running at the moment, which is giving 8 couples or solo parents to be the opportunity to have free treatment, whether that's IVF or a chance of donor sperm, which obviously ties in to your community too. And we also have something else in common in that I have sperm donor conceived children. One of the questions I get asked all the time is, are your children from the same sperm donor? And the answer for us is yes, because we bought vials to, you know, to try and build a family. Are you the same?
Same. All 3 of them are from the same donor.
And that was part of your
but
that was part of your stress, wasn't it? that you wanted to keep it that way, and for the third child, and you were concerned that he wasn't going to donate again.
Well, he wasn't. He'd retired already, so there was no way on earth that we'd ever get any more. I mean, we, you know, at the time, we scrimped and scraped when we were first together, like when we went to have our first child, and, you know, we did what we had to save because we were desperate for that baby. But we bought 7 vials all in one go because we knew that it'd take my wife a while to possibly get pregnant, and then we had a little bit more. But when it got to like the 5th attempt, we were like, geez, we need to get a bit more. So we got another 7. So
Wow.
we've only actually got 1 vial left. Obviously, I've got 2 embryos frozen, which is great. But at the same time, that's what the panic was as well. That was another barrier back in March last year, thinking we have to move to IVF because if we do 1 more, we've got 1 vial left. And that's it. We always agreed that part of our family would be, we both got to carry, but we personally felt that we wanted the children to all be from the same donor. And that's not important to everyone. Some people go, hey, we still want a baby and we'll use another one. But we agreed if we ran out and this didn't work, that would be it. So that, I think that kind of thrown into the mix with secondary infertility during a pandemic, failed ovarian reserve.
Oh gosh, making me feel stressed. How did you decide who was going to carry when?
My wife's got severe polycystic ovaries, so she was told at a very young age she'd never ever have children. So when we went to the clinic, because we've had all the babies with CRGH, and sat down with them after the opening and said, you know, explained her situation. They said, come in for testing. Had the testing. They said, absolutely not. We will get you pregnant. It may take a while because it's severe, but we will get you there. Which we were ecstatic because in her mind, from the age of 16, that was it. She'd never carry. So she was, and it's a really bad perception. I think a lot of people with PCOS, endometriosis or conditions like that have that age-old perception that it's going to be a real struggle, when it's not always the case. So she carried first, and she's a little bit older, and then we knew that I'd carry again. And because I had such a great pregnancy with our son, I mean, I really didn't have any symptoms. I worked up past my due date. I felt great. I had a very traumatic birth, but it didn't feel like it at the time because I did hypnobirth him. I wanted to carry after I'd had him. The next day I was like, I want to do this again. Like, I loved it. I absolutely wanted to be pregnant again. And obviously this pregnancy has been much more traumatic and a lot more stressful, but we're lucky.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Does anyone have any questions? I think there might be another one, unless we've covered it. Let me just see.
There was one right at the top.
Someone said that someone is starting a charity to find treatment for anyone who doesn't receive government funding. Would love to chat to you both. That's amazing. And also, if anyone does want to enter or apply for the initiative that I told you about, it's on until the 10th of March, and the link is in the bio on the Fertility Help Hub Instagram page, or you can go to fertilityhelphub.com to find out more and apply. Was there anything else we were going to chat about tonight, Laura?
No, I think I'd just like to obviously point out that obviously we're ambassadors for the initiative, which is, you've done amazing. I'm just so proud of you. But the LGBT plus community should get involved and, you know, put yourself forward for this, because you never know. Unless you get involved, you don't know. And if you're struggling at the moment or have been through a difficult time, you know, like we have or worse, or you're just looking to conceive and you know that it's not going to be doable, please get involved, because it really could give you that baby that you're dreaming of. And it's a great initiative.
Thank you. The other thing I want to stress is that obviously there will be people who are disheartened if they aren't successful. It's a completely random draw, completely random selection.
The best way.
But, you know, the hope is to help more people in the future and to keep doing this. So keep on going, and you just never know, because we're doing all we can, you are too, to help the communities and give people things that we didn't necessarily have at the time. So it's a good thing, and it's great to be connected. So thank you for your time tonight. And
no problem. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and nice to see everyone.
You too. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.